It's good to see everyone this evening. I'm glad we're together in some shape or form again, and excited to share the Word of God from Psalm 128. We are only a few chapters to the end of Psalms. Must have been, I don't know how many years we've been doing Psalms for, but anyway. Psalm 128 is about the blessing of God. And it particularly focuses on who is the one who is blessed and how does God bless them. And if you look at the psalm, you'll see that 4 different times the word blessing is used in these 6 verses. So there's really no doubt that that is the theme of these verses. The one whom God blesses and how God blesses them. So the question we need to ask is, what does it mean to be blessed? What does it mean to be blessed by God? Otherwise, this chapter won't really mean a whole lot to us. And to be blessed has to do with being whole, being in a good position, being in the right place, in wholeness of being, you might say. So the question is, what is the best position to be in? And the answer is the best position to be in is to be in favor with God. To be in favor with God is to be blessed. And that's really easy to understand because God is the almighty, superior God. He is all good and he is all powerful. And so there's no greater blessing than being in a right standing with God, being under his favor. That's what it means to be blessed. For God to be for you. And we know that the blessing of having God for us comes through Jesus Christ and through what he did on the cross. And because of him, we stand as blessed people. From the top to the bottom, we are blessed in every way imaginable. The Bible even says all things are working together for good to those who love God. That's an amazing thought, that even the bad things are working for our good. We are truly blessed people, even though we can't always see it. And what I want to just make real quickly clear is that to be blessed means more than just feeling right. Although sometimes it doesn't always appear to be, we don't always appear to be blessed physically and in our feelings, and we can still be blessed. For instance, if you looked at the Beatitudes, where Jesus said that Mike has been going through, where Jesus says, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for there's the kingdom of heaven," I believe. But the point there is that is that blessing doesn't always mean feeling good and getting things on earth. But it doesn't exclude that either. Sometimes God does give us things on earth, and sometimes God does bless us that way. And one way to understand what it means to be blessed is to contrast it with the last chapter. Remember Psalm 127, where he said, those who are not under the blessing of God, their labor is in vain. But for us who are under the blessing of God, our labor, everything we do, is going to be blessed. It's going to be with a purpose. It's going to be fulfilling something that is good, and it's not in vain and worthless, even if it might not appear so. So do you want to be blessed? That's the question as we look at these couple verses here. Do you want to be blessed? And every one of us should say, yes, of course I want to be blessed. The only problem is sometimes we pursue blessing in the wrong places, and we think blessing is something other than what it really is. God is the source of blessing, and he's the one who defines it. So who is blessed? And the answer to who is blessed is given in verse 1. The one who fears the Lord and walks in his ways. Blessed is everyone who fears the Lord, who walks in his ways. So what does it mean to fear the Lord? Because that's the person who's blessed. So what does it mean to fear the Lord? To fear the Lord means to have a right attitude towards God, which means to have a profound, and I think profound is the right word here, profound reverence, to have a profound awe of God. It's to see him rightly. It's to see ourselves as being accountable to God, to see all of our lives being centered on God, that everything is for him, everything is through him, and everything is to him. Everything is about God and aligning our lives in the reality that he is the real, the only being to whom everything is accountable to. And it's living in light of his excellence and greatness and supremacy, and seeing life in relationship to him. So what does it look like to fear the Lord? And that is to walk in his ways, right? So I think these 2 points are really similar here. I think to fear the Lord is to walk in his ways. And that means just to do the will of God, to walk in his revealed will for us, to follow his ways. Similar to Psalm 1, verse 1 through 2, right? Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. That's the blessed person who walks in God's ways. They kind of go hand in hand with fearing God as walking in his ways. Now this is the problem. Many people think that fearing God in the way of holiness is the way of miserableness, don't they? Many people think it's not the way of blessing, it's the way of miserableness. It's the way of unblessing. It's the way of unhappiness. But really what it's saying here is the exact opposite, kind of like the upside down kingdom of Matthew chapter 5 and the Beatitudes and the blessings, that the way of God is the way of blessing. The way of fearing God and walking in his way is actually the way of blessing, which is the opposite of the way the world thinks. Actually, the fear of the Lord leads to life, according to Proverbs 10, verse 22. Now, this walking in the fear of God is really talking about a pattern of life. It's not talking about, like, if someone makes a mistake, we all do, or if someone sins, we all sin, right? It's not saying that person doesn't fear God and that person doesn't walk in his ways. This is talking about the pattern of our lives. This is talking about the orientation of our lives. It's talking about the direction of our lives. And so it's not wrong to want a blessed life. It's the right thing to want, but the question is, are we going in the right direction? Do we know where it comes from? And do we know how to get it? So here's a question for you. How do we live in the fear of the Lord and walk in his ways? And the question that this is so important, because sometimes we think we need to work our way to God. Sometimes we think we need to manipulate God, right? That the fear of the Lord is something that I create within myself, that I am trying to get God to bless me if I can fear him enough, if I can walk in his ways enough, that I'm going to manipulate God like all the idols of the world to bless me and to give me what I want. Well, that's obviously not what it's saying, right? It's not talking about our works, being blessed by our works. That's not what it's talking about. Rather, believing that God is who he says he is true, and his way is blessed. That is how we walk in this way. It's the way of faith. It's the way of believing in God. It's trusting that he is who he says he is, and he will bless us as he says he will bless us. And so it really is the way of faith. It's what it looks like to bear fruit of salvation, which is simply to walk the path of faith. That's what it's talking about. The goodness of God belongs to those who trust him. So the rest of this passage is just telling us, what are the blessings? Here are some broad descriptions of the blessings to those who fear God, who walk in his ways. In verses 2 through 6. Your labor shall be fruitful. That's one blessing, broad perspective of blessing. Verse 2, you shall eat the fruit of the labor of your hands. You shall be blessed, and it shall be well with you. And this doesn't mean our labor is not going to be hard. It doesn't mean it's not going to be paved with difficulties, right? That's not what it's talking about there. But it means it will be fruitful. It means it will be blessed by God. And we might not see it in this world, but we know we're not working in vain. It's kind of like the opposite of the curse, right? The curse in Genesis 3, verse 19 made everything we do vain and futile. But now it's reversed. It's for a purpose. It's fulfilling a good purpose from God. And so it's not in vain. It's for a purpose. And God will bless us in our efforts. And secondly, your house or your family will be fruitful. And verses 3 through 4 says that. Your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house. Your children will be like olive shoots around your table. Behold, thus shall be the man be blessed who fears the Lord. And so here we move from the individual in his labors being blessed to the whole family. And obviously this doesn't mean that your family is going to walk according to the Lord, because if you do all the right things, it's not like necessarily going to happen, like if you walk according to the Lord. But that is the general direction and the general way things work, right? That's what it's saying here. And it's kind of like a proverb or a wisdom statement. And so the person is blessed. The wife and the children are working for the welfare of the whole family. And that way we're blessed. And so once again, it doesn't mean that everything's going to work out the way you want it to, but this is the general way things work out. And finally, your prayer. there are two statements here. Your community will prosper, verse 5. The Lord bless you from Zion. May you see the prosperity of Jerusalem all the days of your life. And so this isn't just about our blessing. It's about us blessing our community. And it says the person who fears the Lord and walks in his ways, the prayer is that we will bless our community as well. And it's really interesting. If you look at the way God called for Israel to live, was he called them to bless their community when they were in exile in Babylon. Listen to Jeremiah 29, 5-7. Build houses and live in them. Plant gardens and eat their produce. Take wives and have sons and daughters. Take wives for your sons and give your daughters in marriage, that they may bear sons and daughters. Multiply there and do not decrease. But seek the welfare of the city where I have sent you into exile, and pray the Lord on its behalf, for in its welfare you will find your welfare. And so the question is, how can we be a blessing to Southbridge? How can God, through us, bless our neighbors and those people around us? Are we a blessing to our neighbors? Are we a blessing to those around us? Because we should be. When we're walking in the fear of the Lord and walking according to his path, we should be a blessing to those around us, right? And finally, the prayer is that you may see your children's children. May you see your children's children. Peace be upon Israel, verse 6. And the blessing goes on to future generations, is what it says there. So let me mention just a few quick questions we might have about this passage and the blessings of God that might come up to our minds. What about the many songs of lament? You know, they seem to contradict the blessed person. And many of the Psalms are this person who's just in a terrible condition, and he fears the Lord and is walking according to his way, but he's just in an awful condition and he's not doing too well. And the important thing is to understand that this is not the entire story here, that this is one perspective, that God does bless us. It's just not always the way we always see it to be. But we need to understand that the laments are part of the Christian life, and so is the blessing that we see here. And we need to see the entire Psalms when we think about the Christian life. What about those who have not experienced the blessings, who fear the Lord? And there are many people, right, who might not have a wife, who might not have children, who might not have a job that they think is what they want it to be, who are still blessed and are still fearing the Lord and walking according to his ways. These are just broad ways that sometimes God blesses people, right? But ultimately, we know that there is something about this that we need to understand that is concrete and real. And so even though not everyone has all these blessings, yet these blessings, we can't dismiss this and call it just a spiritual thing. Physical realities are true in our lives. Sometimes God blesses us in these ways, but sometimes the blessings will be sweeter that are reserved for eternity. And I think both of those ways need to be understood. If we get anything, it's the grace of God. And sometimes he chooses to bless us this way, and sometimes he doesn't. But ultimately, we know we are blessed if we are in Christ. So we need to be encouraged, keep walking in the fear of the Lord, keep walking in the fear of the Lord, keep walking in his path. And 1 Corinthians 15:58 should be encouraging to us as we kind of come to a conclusion here. Therefore, my beloved brothers, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain. So know that your labor is not in vain. What good news it is today to know that because of Christ, we are blessed people, and everything we do has a purpose to it, a good purpose from God.